Well, man, it's really good to see you guys today. My name is Chris. I'm one of the pastors here, and it's my privilege to share with you this morning. How many of you ever had one of those days? I had one of those days a couple weeks ago, and let me tell you why I was having one of those days. I was really bothered by something that I had done in my past, and this just happened a couple weeks ago, and what was very interesting about this is, what was so frustrating about this is something that I asked God for forgiveness for. And what was even more frustrating in that is when I asked God to forgive me, I looked back and I remembered that I felt His forgiveness. I actually experienced His forgiveness right after. I experienced His love. I experienced His grace. So I was really frustrated on this day because I was like, man, why am I bothered by this? So later that day, I slow down and I go on a prayer walk. And I'm just like, God, why am I bothered by this? I asked for forgiveness. I experienced your forgiveness. This was years ago. Why am I still bothered by this? Now, He didn't answer me right away, but later in the walk, a scripture came to my mind, and I want to share it with you this morning. And it was this, Proverbs 29. Fear of man will prove to be a snare. Basically, what God was saying to me is fear of man will prove to be a trap. And as I thought about it, God was right. Shocker, right? Shocker that God was right? One reason I was trapped is I feared what others would think of me if they knew what I had done. Guys, God forgave me the moment that I asked. This was a couple decades ago. He forgave me the moment that I asked. But sometimes I trust in His love and in His grace, but sometimes instead of trusting in His grace and view of me, at times I can be trapped by what others may think. Not even what they do think, what they may think. See, I don't think most want to admit that there's still times where they're affected by others. It feels like something we should be able to get over as we mature. It feels like, oh my gosh, why are we back in high school again? Oh my gosh, why are all these groupies around in my mind? It can be hard to admit, but fear of others, listen to this, affects people of all ages more than we realize. It really does affect us, people of all ages, more than we realize. So let's go to the Bible to see one way fear of others can be a trap. Now, last week, we talked about a parable that Jesus shared about a person who goes on a journey and entrusts his wealth to a few different people. And he gives one person 5 bags of gold, gives another person 2 bags of gold, and he gives a third person 1 bag of gold. And last Sunday, we focused on the first 2 and discovered that they were faithful and were rewarded in various ways for their faithfulness. But what about the third person? What did he do? Let's look at the story. It's very interesting. In Matthew, it says this. Then the man who received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And he's about to admit something, and can I let you in on a little context? This guy isn't in high school. He's not in high school when he says this. He said, I was afraid of you. And because I was afraid of you, I hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Man, a completely different response than the other 2. This probably goes without saying, but the owner wasn't happy. He was not happy at all. One of the things he ends up telling the person is, you could have done something. You could have at least put my money into a bank. I would have at least gained interest. It didn't end well for this person, and they really did face some really, really deep consequences. But I want you to pay attention. This is so important. If there's one or two things that if you draw away from this message, here's one of them that I want about to say. I hope that you remember. I hope it hits your spirit. Listen to this. It's very important. Fear of someone else caused him to do something foolish instead of faithful. Did you hear that? Fear of his master caused him to do something foolish instead of faithful. He buried the wealth. This person, now, at least this person saw how this someone affected him. I was afraid of you, so I hid your wealth. For many, though, besides not wanting to admit it, for many of us, we don't even realize that we're trapped by the fear of others. Remember, I didn't even realize, why is this bothering me? Why is this past wrong that I've asked for forgiveness for? Why is it bothering me? I didn't even realize it was fear of others until God gave me that verse. In fact, speaking of verses, listen to this verse. In Psalm 42, it says this, my bones, listen, suffer mortal agony. Why? Fear of others. Hint, this guy isn't in middle school. Grown person. My bones are in mortal agony as my foes taunt me. Saying to me all day long, in this context, it was, where's your God? Where's your God? Did he show up yet? But then the psalmist does something very important that we can learn from. He says, why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? As I just revealed from the verse, the person was trapped by the taunting of others. But then they do something that's so important for us to do when we're trapped. The person asks, why? Why am I down? Why am I so disturbed? Can I tell you, when you feel trapped, it's good to ask, why is this bothering me? Or Pastor Julian, he's shared this several times. What's taking away my freedom? Go back to my story. I didn't get an answer until I said, God, why do I still battle this at times? You know, whether it's fear of others or something else that's trapping you, it's an important part of the freedom process to be able to diagnose what you're trapped by. Let me give a physical example that I think we can all relate to. Say you had a serious symptom, and it wasn't just like a head cold or something, and it wasn't going away. What do most people do when that happens? They go to the doctor because they realize that you can have a headache for 99 different reasons. Why do I keep having a headache? So you go to the doctor. It could be because you need new eyeglasses. It could be because there's something going on in here. It could be because you're dehydrated. There's so many varying things just in a simple headache, if it doesn't go away, of course, on why you're having that symptom. So you go to the doctor and you have tests and you're looking for results and things come in, and then finally it gets diagnosed. And you're like, and then because of that, because it was diagnosed, you are now able to possibly go on a diet plan, or you're able to get medicine, or the doctor puts you on a physical therapy plan, or they put you on a therapy plan, whatever it may be. Why? Because now you know why you're having the symptom. This is the root. And because this is the root, now we can treat it. Now we can start to walk in freedom because of it. See, we get that when it comes to a physical doctor, but it's the same when our souls are trapped. If I wouldn't have asked God, why was I bothered? I probably would have chalked it up to like different things like, oh, I guess I'm just struggling with false guilt, which I have struggled with false guilt before. Or maybe this is like bad pizza from the night before. I don't know. Did I eat a bad pepperoni? Something. But the trap was fear of others. Do you see why it's an important part of the freedom process to slow down? That's why since the fall, we've been encouraging you to slow down. It takes time to go to the physical doctor, doesn't it? You have to carve out time. You might have to get up early. You have to fill out 81 questionnaires once you get there. It's like, oh my gosh. Can I just say yes and we'll move on? Or, why all these like electronic consents and everything, right? But it takes time to go to the doctor. You have to slow down. It's the same with God. To slow down, to ask yourself, why am I trapped? And if you get stuck, you may even ask a trusted friend, a counselor, or a pastor. But once you know what you're trapped by, you can now take appropriate steps to gain freedom and ask God to help you overcome it, just like you would at a doctor when it comes to your physical health. So, now that we see the importance of asking questions when we're trapped, I have a question for you. See how I did that? I have a question for you. For context, let's go back to the person who buried his owner's wealth. He said, man, I was afraid of you, so I hid your wealth. With that in mind, what are you burying because of a fear of another person? I really want you to think about that. What are you burying or potentially burying because of a fear of another person? Again, I know it might be hard to realize, so I'm going to give lots of examples here, and maybe you'll find yourself not exactly in these situations, but maybe you'll find yourself in a similar situation. Maybe like me, you're burying your freedom to get past your past because you fear what others may think if they found out. That's what happened to me a couple weeks ago. That's why I had that day, right? Maybe for some of you, you're burying your joy at work because you're worried about what others think of you. Maybe for some of you, you're burying a friendship or relationship because you fear being hurt by them. And so you keep them at arm's length. Maybe some of you burying yourself in overwork because you fear what your boss thinks and you want them to think that you're great. And so you're burying yourself in overwork. What about this one? Maybe you're burying a certain people or people groups, allowing the fear of others, the fear of media, or the fear of social media to form your opinion of that person or certain people groups. Maybe you're burying a decision. You're paralyzed by indecision because you fear the opinions of others and you fear the consequences that your decision could give. Maybe you're burying your purpose or uniqueness because you want to fit in. Maybe you're burying your peace because you're concerned about what others may be saying about you behind your back. Or how about this one? This is really important. Maybe you're burying Jesus' love and grace for someone because they may not agree with you about faith, politics, or justice. This is just a side note. Can you hold on to that one when we get to the fall, please? We all know what's coming in the fall. And we have a choice to make. Are we going to bury Jesus' love and grace and make the excuse? They don't think the way I do, about politics and justice? Or are we going to allow Jesus to help us rise above? So I just encourage you to hold on to that and be asking that question in the fall as things start to ramp up. Am I burying his love for others, or am I willing to still give love to others? Guys, really, the examples are endless. Do you find yourself in some of these examples I gave? If you do, as you already know, this is obvious, being buried is a trap. It's suffocating. And if we're not careful, we slowly allow ourselves and the opportunities we have to be buried because of the fear of others. But I'm here to tell you today, thankfully, we can find freedom. We can find it. God is here. That's why you're here. You want freedom today. And God can give it to you step by step. God wants to bring life to your soul. He wants you to win within. He wants to do so much in your life. And he can. Let's go back and look at the complete Proverbs 29 verse. I shared part of it with you earlier. Let's share the whole one. Proverbs 29. Fear of man will prove to be a trap, but, love it. Whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. Kept safe. Take my beginning story. I can become trapped, just being very vulnerable with you guys. I can become trapped pretty quickly if what others may think starts to take over. The trap is very real in my life, in my soul. It can happen pretty quickly. But if I choose to trust his grace and his view of me, he can help me break free from the trap. And he can do the same for you as well. Simply put, the freedom from the fear of others is simply trusting God. Now some of you are like, duh. So deep, PK. Hold on. A while ago, we asked this question during a message. We asked this: is your faith growing in a way where you believe God, not just believe in him? Do you see the difference? Believing what he says, not just that he exists. Believing his heart towards you, not just that he's out there somewhere. It's you trusting him to bring about what's best for your life and your character and your family and your future and even your eternity. Do you see the difference between believing in God exists and believing him? In fact, listen to these verses. I really hope that they help your soul today and help you win within, help you take a step of freedom. In Isaiah, it says this. Does it say, you will keep in a perfect trap? You will keep in a perfect burial ground. It's still a burial ground, but it's going to be perfect for you. Woo! Freshly cut, good headboard. No. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast. Why are they steadfast? Because they trust in you. And then the person kind of makes it this factual statement. Hey, if you trust in him, he can give you peace. He can make your mind steadfast. And then he goes into encouragement mode. Trust in the Lord forever. Not just today, not when you're just having that day. Trust in the Lord forever, because he is the rock. Why is it important to have your faith grow in a way where you believe God, not just believe in him? There's several reasons, but I want to give one reason, and this is the other thing where I'm like, hey, if there's one thing you take home today, take this home today. This is important, why it's important for our faith to grow in believing God instead of believing he exists. You ready for it? Someone ready for it? Here's one reason: because you can believe God exists and still fear others. Did you hear that? You can believe God exists and still fear others. But someone can stay free and peaceful when their mind is steadfast. And what did the verse say? How does their mind stay steadfast? Because they trust in God. And since they trust in God, they fixate on His thoughts for them instead of what others do think or may think of them. Since they trust in God, they fixate on what He has done or can do for them instead of what others have or may do to them. When we choose to trust God, Adam, I need a volunteer. Can you come up here, please? Look at that. No fear of others at all, Adam. Get on up here. Yeah, you just went right for it. Took that off. When we choose to trust God, so you can stand over here, He supports our mind and steadies our soul, which helps us stay at peace. And as we learn to trust Him consistently, it's not just a moment of freedom. We now experience living in freedom. So, Adam, did you eat your Wheaties this morning? Okay, at least this. Did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night?
No, not this week.
Oh, crap. You're strong. I know you can take this. Okay, turn around here. Okay. I'm gonna just lean against you, okay? With my nothing weird, just my hand here. So here's a visual example. You got me? Okay. I'm like totally in your hands right now. So if you really ever loved me, just stand right there, okay? I don't want to break something. Trust means that we lean upon, we rely upon something. What am I doing right now? I'm leaning upon Adam so that I don't break my nose or my arm or something, right? Or at least even fall goofily. When we decide to lean upon, to rely upon what God thinks of us, His view of us, it steadies us. Just like this is steadying me right now. Now, Adam, come over here. You're going to do a couple other things. Come over here. Now you're the people. Same thing. You're going to turn your back. So now you're God over here. Now you're just a man, okay? Is that okay? You're a little humbled now. It's crap. Like God-like for a moment, right? Oftentimes what we do is we lean upon, we rely upon others and what they think of us and what the value that they place in us. Adam, why are you moving? Over here, you were fine. Actually, that's a good point, Adam. Like people shift. Opinions change. I'm actually glad that you did that. Take a step. Whew, thank you for not taking too big of a step. But you see what happened there. People shift. People change their opinion. And then all of a sudden, when they think good of us, it's great. But man, when they're not, it's really, we lose our foundation. Okay, you are so holy today, Adam, you get to be God twice. So come back over here. The wife, the truth comes out with the wife. The verse just said that He's our rock. God's opinion of us doesn't change. I'm going to talk about this later, but I said yes to Jesus when I was 8. And this thing that I was embarrassed about happened later in life. Do you know Jesus still said yes to me even though He knew I was going to do that? His opinion didn't change. His value of me didn't change. Jesus still died for me. Thank you, Adam. Can we give Adam a hand? Do you see how trusting God frees us from the fear of others? His thoughts and his view of us support us, give us a foundation, and steadies us. What he can and do for us supports us, gives us a foundation, and steadies us. And when we have this type of freedom, we sound like the psalmist. Listen in, Psalm 56. When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. In fact, can you say that with me? When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. Say it again. When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God, who I trust and am not afraid. Then they say this, man, the confidence is brewing now. What can mere mortals do to me? I have God on my side. Earlier, I asked you what you could be burying because of fear of another. But let me ask this in a different way. In what ways would you find freedom if trusting God became a bigger focus instead of fearing others? Leaning on, relying upon, being supported by his love, his grace, his view of you and what he has and can do for you. It's like, man, they may think this about me, but my God's opinion is stronger than theirs. They might be wanting to do this, but man, what my God has already done for me. I said yes to Jesus at 8. I said that earlier, and I've been a pastor for 2 decades. Does it surprise you that I still have a long way to go in learning how to trust his love and his grace and his view of me and what he has and can do for me in a way that frees me from the fear of others? I just admitted it happened a couple weeks ago. I was so shocked. It's like, really? Wow. I'm still way in process. Guys, I've heard of Jesus' love and grace and what he can do for me even before I was 8. But let me let you on a little secret. Can I do that this morning? Hearing great things about God doesn't free us from the fear of others. And as I said earlier, believing in God, believing that God exists, doesn't free us from the fear of others. Believing God does. Trusting him over others does. It's a process, but step by step, he can help us live in freedom. Can I say that, maybe all of us need this morning, but God's love is more important and immense than any other love you've ever experienced or will ever experience. Amen. His grace gives you an identity that can't be robbed or taken from you, no matter what others think about you or how people feel about you. The value he places on you can't be taken away from you. What he has done and can do for you is so much greater than what others may do to you. Now, I'm not pretending that what others do to us or think about us doesn't hurt. Again, I just shared that I had a day because of it a couple weeks ago, and it brought up some really unhealthy memories and feelings, but it doesn't have to define us or trap us in fear. When we trust what he's done for us, it defines us. We are children of God, sons of God, daughters of God, and it can't be taken from us. So I ask again, in what ways would you find freedom Again, it's a process, step by step. If trusting God became a bigger focus instead of fearing others, maybe you'd start to break free from your past. Maybe you'd start to find joy in your work again. God, you're the one that got me this job. It's okay for people to think well of us. That's all of us, but we don't want to go from faithful to foolish or freedom to trapped. So maybe for some of you, it's finding joy in your work again. Maybe you'd take a step towards that potential friendship or relationship. Maybe you'd start concentrating on just being faithful at work instead of overworking and hoping that everyone thinks you're great. You know what? I'm just going to be faithful. Maybe you'd start to give the certain person or people groups a chance because you'd view them the way God does instead of the way other people do. Maybe you'd be able to make that important life decision. Because guys, when we make decisions, especially in our day and age today, there's sides. There's sides. But maybe God would help you make that important life decision. Maybe you'd start to live in your purpose or uniqueness. Maybe you start to gain peace. Yeah, it's going to happen. Guys, someone's probably going to gossip about this message today. It's going to happen. I can't believe that pastor. Can't believe that church. It's going to happen. Not everyone's going to like us. And I'm not saying that's easy, but it's going to happen. But maybe you'd start to gain peace if what God thought of you was more important than what others might say behind your back. And how about this one? I shared it earlier. Let's keep it in our hearts for the fall. Maybe you'd start to share Jesus' love and grace with someone that has a different faith or political or justice decisions than you, because God tells us to love people anyway. And maybe we'd be free to do that. You know, as we start to close, I have a few questions for you. They'll be up on the screen. What's one step you can take this week to strengthen your trust in God? Guys, I already said it. That's why I shared, I said yes to Jesus when I was 8. I've been a pastor for over 2 decades. And I still have to. I'm still way in process on strengthening my trust. I've heard about him a lot. I've believed that God has existed forever. In fact, I can't remember a time in my life where I didn't believe that God exists. I've had other struggles and things, but I'm still way in process when it comes to trusting him. And so maybe there's something this week. Maybe he wants you to slow down in some way. Here's number 2. How might the fear of other people be a trap you're finding yourself in? How may the fear of other people be a trap you're finding yourself in? And then number 3, and this is the really biggie because it's about freedom. What's one way you'd start to find freedom if trusting God and believing in his love and grace for you became a bigger focus instead of fearing others? Let's do this. How about let's stand to our feet. Pastor Steve is going to come out in a moment to close us off in a song, but with heads bowed and eyes closed, I just want you to do something. I don't want you to put your hands up. I want you to put your hands out. Put your hands out. There's nothing weird going on here. All you're doing, this is a symbol of saying, God, It is my desire to start relying and leaning into you. Your opinion of me, what you think, my identity in you, my value in you, what you've done for me, what you will do for me. Help me to rely upon you. And so why don't you take a moment or two with your hands out, just talking to God about trust and fear of others, or buried, or freedom, whatever's in your heart. Just talk to him about it right now. And then Pastor Steve, in a moment or two, if you can close us in song, and then Pastor Julian will come up.